Hi, this is David Snell with ExecutiveRestoration.com. Got mold. We have TheCure.com, and I've got a special guest with us today, and his name is Jim Packard. And Jim Packard owns a company called Control Environmental. Is that correct, Jim?
Yes.
And
Yes,
what
David.
and what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about why are more realtors and brokers not suggesting to the would-be buyer that they have a mold inspection to the home before it's bought, Jim?
Yeah, and it's a problem. Even here in Colorado, where my business is located, we're finding that it's not something that's necessarily being recommended anymore.
Why?
Well, it's I think there's a number of reasons. I think there's an element of hysteria that's been created from the press and the mitigation industry itself, and I know there's been times when the conditions were exaggerated. Yes, every home has mold in it, um, and it's oftentimes exaggerated by the mitigation company, and that's one reason out here it's not being recommended, I'm sure, and I just think the other thing is the cost involved in a mold inspection. While it's money well spent, if there is a problem, the buyer should certainly be made aware of it. But it doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem to fit the protocols uh, established in the real estate industry.
So, Jim, let me make sure I understand something. And I'm mostly asking this question for the people who are watching this video. And that is that before somebody buys a used car, don't they get a mechanic to check the car out first?
If their if if their wisdom is adequate, yes.
Okay, so let me try to understand something here. So somebody spends $500,000 on a home. Okay, they're going to spend. We're going to say we'll say $500,000 on a home. This is probably one of the biggest investments that they're ever going to make. Correct?
That's correct. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So when you're spending this kind of money, um, why wouldn't you want to know what is going on to the home before you buy it? In other words, why wouldn't people want this intel?
Well, I think I think a bu- I would suspect that every buyer wants that intel. Um, the the fact that there's mold in a home, it can be the reasons for that mold being there can, in the long run, be very costly to repair, and you're certainly better off finding that out up front, where you have some negotiating ability or power with the sellers to help fund those repairs, and it's something that certainly should be done, but is not um, being recommended by agents as it was even 8 or 10 years ago.
Hmm. So, I'm seeing so many people. They're buying these homes that they didn't have a mold inspection done, Jim. They had no samples taken, and they're buying these homes, and then they're calling me up and say, "Hey, Dave, what's going on?" Be like, what do you mean? They're just like, Dave, we got problems out here. What's going on? I said, did you not have a home inspection? They're like, yeah, we had a home inspection. I said, did you not have a mold inspection with air samples and swab or liftoff samples? And did anybody scan your walls and things like that? And they're like, no. I said, did your realtor or broker not suggest that you do this because this is probably one of the most biggest investments you'll ever make? No, Dave. It's a crying shame. So when a realtor or broker, when they're not looking out for the client, for the buyer, that is a crying shame. That is a crying
Oh, it
shame.
is, and it's absolutely wrong. It should not be that way.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And Jim, you would not believe the people who the realtor, the broker, has not said, you guys might want to consider having a mold inspection with sampling and testing. Just, give you some heads up to see what's going on here. See what the
well,
air's like.
and what confuses me about that, David, is out there on the eastern seaboard, the climate is totally different than here in Colorado, where it's very dry.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't fathom buying a home anywhere on that eastern seaboard and not having a mold inspection.
Unbelievable.
Done, yeah, it should be done with every sale. It really should.
And here's the sad part, Jim. The sad part is that they're trying to save money, and I get that. I get that people want to save money, but really, um, they're not saving any money, and they're not having peace of mind because much of the time, I can come into a home, do the inspection, and I'm finding things that other people are missing.
Oh,
And
sure.
for example, um, moisture level readings of over 30% in walls. Okay, now
That's a concern.
yeah. So should the home inspector have caught this? Well, another thing is, what about the gutters? What about overflowing gutters? Should the home inspector have caught that? Another thing is that you've got wood rot in a home. Should the home inspector have caught that? But I tell people this: I'm not a home inspector. I have nothing to do with home inspections. I am a mold inspector. I'm looking for issues with water damage. I'm looking for I'm doing moisture level readings and for thermal scans and so I tell people this: before you buy a home, just realize buyer beware, because after you buy that home, there is nothing you can do. And here's what I
That's
tell
right.
people: okay, so you spend $500 to $1,000 to have a mold inspection. So that's going to give people peace of mind. Okay, that's number one. Number two, uh, I'm not sure, you'd have to talk to your tax attorney or CPA, but I think this is tax deductible. And then number three, you can use this as a bargaining chip. So, say for example, the home needs. I'm just going to use this as an example. But say for example, the home needs, we'll say $5,000 worth of work. I don't know, $1,000 worth of work. So we'll say you got water damage issues and you got high moisture level issues. So we need to do a dry out of certain areas of certain walls, or cut out certain walls, or spray an antimicrobial application, or whatever product the restoration company uses. Um, but if they know this on the front end, the problems going in, then they
Oh,
could cut
sure.
they could come in at a lower price. So the buyer holds all the cards, but if he or she is not informed or educated on this, oh my goodness. And it really troubles me to hear about so many brokers, and I'm not mentioning any names, but it just really concerns me hearing of so many brokers and so many realtors saying you don't need a mold inspection with sampling and testing. Well, how do they know? They don't know.
Exactly.
They don't know.
Exactly. And I can't, like I said, with the climatic conditions being as different as they are out there as here, I can't imagine not doing a mold inspection and buying a house. It makes no sense whatsoever, because the cost of repairs can be pretty huge. I know I just had one here about 3 weeks ago where the home inspector made notes of something he saw in the attic. I went up and did an inspection. By the time they got done with bids, they were looking at a $6,000 bill to get the mold out of the attic. And of course, the potential buyer was able to go to the seller and I'll continue with the purchase, but this has to be addressed. So there was a $6,000 allotment made on the sale of the house to correct the mold.
Actually,
Yeah.
I would have doubled that. I would have said they're telling me $6,000, but I want you to double that. In other words, the buyer is in the driver's seat. Okay.
That's right. Exactly.
And if the seller doesn't want to sell, be like, okay, bye bye, ta.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, Jim, is that even brand new homes. I did a inspection down in South Carolina, brand new home, and the realtor told the buyer, "This is a brand new home. You don't need a home inspection." And the buyer just happened to be an MD, medical doctor. And she was like, "What do you mean we don't need a mold inspection? Oh, you need one. This is a brand new home." So anyway, make a long
story. Out in the elements for how many months while they were building it.
That's right. That's right. So, Jim, I found issues in the dining area. I found issues in the kitchen. And the realtor was off. She was not happy that I found all these issues. And she said to me, she goes, "Why are you doing this?" I said, "Why am I doing what?" She goes, "Well, why did you come ahead to do this inspection? You didn't have my permission." I was like, "Ma'am, you are not my client. My client is the doctor, is the MD. Her and her husband are the ones who called me out there. So you need to take this up with him and her."
Yeah.
Anyway, I found so many problems. The builder did not like this one bit.
Oh, I'm sure he didn't.
Okay, and my client said, "You will listen to Dave. You will listen to Dave and what he tells you to do. And if you don't want to do it, with Dave's recommendations, we're going to walk." So the builder was like, "Nah, we're not going to do this." So the buyer said, "Okay, ta. You just lost your sale." So it's so easy to remedy. Okay? So if something is wet, we dry it out.
Sure.
Okay? We dry it out because you and I both know, Jim, we don't need wet homes because when we have wet homes, we have mold issues. So anyway, all they had to do is cut these areas out that I told them to cut out, dry it out, but they didn't want to do it. So they lost the sale of a home. Now, how ridiculous is that?
Yeah, that it makes no sense whatsoever.
And I don't know what the house cost. I'm thinking, I don't know, $600,000 or $700,000. Okay, when they could have probably resolved this problem. Oh, I'm thinking for probably about maybe 10,000. So over $10,000 they lost a sale because they didn't want to take care of the problem. That doesn't even make any sense to me.
Well, it doesn't, except when you factor in that someone else will come along who doesn't know well enough to have a mold inspection, and they'll likely buy the house. So no, it doesn't make any sense that a builder would do that. Who would want that risk on your reputation? I certainly wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hear so many stories from people. People are buying a home and don't even have a mold inspection with sampling and testing performed. And I just get so many calls and say, Dave, you got to help me. I was just like, why did you not have a mold inspection done? It wouldn't have cost very much.
No, that's
Dave,
true.
I mean, I just hear this all the time from clients. Dave, our realtor or broker told us it wasn't necessary. It wasn't needed. And I'm thinking to myself, who is educating the people out there? Is anybody educating the would-be buyer, especially the first-time buyer? Oh my goodness, it's typically the first-time buyer who gets really, really taken advantage of because they don't know. Nobody's
That's
educated them.
true. Yeah.
It's just you remember your first car that you bought?
Oh, sure.
Did you get burned on your first car?
I didn't know,
Okay.
but I could, easily could have. Um, it was only because of the previous owner that I didn't.
Okay. So
But
you probably knew the previous owner, correct?
oh yes,
You
I did.
you probably trusted the previous owner.
I did.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Um,
in that and the car that you bought, what did that cost? Your first car?
um,
$1,000.
it was. Let's see. Actually, it was 900.
Okay. So I guess my point with people is whether it costs $900 to buy your car, whatever you buy, a car, a boat, a home, I tell people get it in, have somebody check it out because
Oh, sure.
not only will you have peace of mind, but it could save you a lot of money because after you buy the home, oh my goodness, it's gonna be you're gonna have to go after the seller for problems in a legal way. Whereas you don't need this up front if you just do your due diligence and think about yourself. Just remember this, folks. Buyer beware. When you buy a home, buyer beware.
Absolutely.
And
And,
whether, yep,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, well, particularly in today's uh, construction market, where homes are built so much tighter because of the fuel issues, um, they don't breathe. It's not like the homes of 40 years ago. Um, you've got this mold locked in the house, and there's many more problems today in new homes than there was 40 or 50 years ago because of that factor. The homes are tighter,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I'm not saying that's a bad thing in and of itself, but it needs to be considered uh, when you're talking about the problems created by mold growth.
Right.
Um,
Right. Do you think perhaps that the reason that more brokers and realtors are not suggesting to the buyer is because they're afraid that it's going to destroy their sale or it's going to kill their sale?
oh, absolutely. I think that's the reason.
Oh, that's so sad. Well,
It is.
whether, there's, Jim, since I've been in business since 1987, there's not been one home that I've not been able to take care of. And people always say, well, Dave, are we going to have to bulldoze our home? I'm like, no, no, not at all. I mean, so my point to people is to reassure them. So when you buy a home, you want to have at least 3 inspections. You want to have a mold inspection with sampling and testing, air samples, swabs, lift-offs. At least have air samples, minimum. You want to have a home inspection, and you want to have a termite inspection. Those are three very critical inspections that people have performed before you agree to buy any home.
Well, I think that's excellent advice, David. Um, even we don't deal with termites to a great extent out here.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, the other two items are critical, and a home should not be sold without those inspections. They absolutely should not.
But Jim, do you think it's because people are just naive? Or do you think it's because people don't care? Or do you think it's because people are just trying to save money? What is it?
Well, I think a big part of it is um, they they recognize perhaps that they don't have the knowledge they need to make a decision. Okay, could there be a mold problem in this home? Um, and for a very long time, mold wasn't an issue. Um, and it's only since we've tightened up our homes and we now have other contaminants that we're dealing with in the home that those contaminants can cause our immune systems to overwork, and
Right.
then they don't have the ability to fight off the molds, or it could be the other way around, to fight off the other contaminants we have in our homes. But the contaminants certainly need to be dealt with.
And what can we do, Jim, to educate more brokers and more realtors so they understand the importance of a mold inspection, home inspection, termite inspection? But we're talking about mold here, mold inspection.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's some homes where I do an inspection. I'll be like, hey, we're looking good here. Dave, what do you mean?
Sure. Yeah.
We're looking good here. Air samples looking good. Um,
The visual is looking
Visual
good.
looks good. Crawl space looking good. Um, oh, Dave, but I know we've got issues in this home. Be like, based on the lab report, based on my visual, based on moisture level readings, based on a number of things that I did that you paid for, sir or ma'am, we're looking good. So I'm not going to recommend that anything be done. So I think that maybe, just maybe, the brokers and realtors are thinking that the inspection is going to kill their deal. And
I'm
but
sure that's always a concern.
but it doesn't have to be that way, because
No.
even if you have whether it's a new home, brand new built home, or a home that's been around for years, I mean every home has something that needs something done to it. Maybe there's a crack in the foundation. Okay, all right, let's fill up that crack. Let's pressure wash that area on the home. We've got something growing over here. Okay, or There's one area of the home. It looks like we got some growth in there. Okay, I mean it's easily resolved.
Oh yeah,
But these realtors and
usually the
brokers,
case. It's usually easier than it is more difficult.
yes, yes, and I just tell people if there's anything to get out of this video, anything to get out of this video, it is buyer beware. And I can't stress that enough. And actually, if I was a realtor or broker, I would have in my paperwork, if I was a realtor or broker, that the buyer is signing off that he or she does not want a mold inspection. And I know some that do this. And Jim, I'm not saying that all realtors and brokers are bad people. I'm not saying they're all crooks. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that they really need to educate their client, their customer, buyer, seller, how the importance of a mold inspection.
Well, and I couldn't agree with you more, David. And I do a lot of presentations for real estate offices, and in those discussions, it, it appears to me that the agents are going to take the best interest of their buyers, um, and move forward, and yet so many times that doesn't happen. And again, I don't know that that's due to not being the agent not encouraging the buyer,
Right?
or if it's the buyer just not interested.
Right, right. Mm-hmm. Well, I always tell people, one of my favorite sayings, Jim, is knowledge is power. Martin Luther King, that was his saying.
Yeah.
But I have an addendum to that, and that is knowledge is power, but only if we apply that knowledge to the circumstances.
Yes. Yeah. You're
So,
absolutely right.
so say for example, I'm buying $1 million house, and I don't have a mold inspection done. 3 or 4 months down the road, I start doing work, and I find out, and I'm just using a scenario here, just using a scenario, for example. But I find water damage in the house because I'm getting ready to do some work in the home. And I find all these problems. I've already bought the home. Well, guess what? The house is mine. There's not much I can do unless I want to sue the seller. Now, can people typically do that? Sure, they can do that. You can sue anybody you want. Um,
But
but
again, there's cost associated with that.
oh my goodness. So why would I've got one, two, three clients right now who are suing the they're suing their broker or their realtor because nobody told them about all these issues with the home before they bought the home. And I've asked them. I said, why didn't you ask for a mold inspection to this home? Like they're like, Dave, I didn't know about this. I was just like, oh my goodness. I said, well, I guess you learned a very valuable lesson, Dave. I
Hard
learned
way.
buyer beware. And
Yes.
what I want this video to be about is buyer beware. Before you buy anything, check it out. And if we're not knowledgeable about checking something out, then pay somebody else to do it.
Well, and the whole thing for me here, David, is the broker. Yeah, the buyer, uh, they may not be aware of certain things, but if I were selling real estate, particularly because of the size of the investment.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I would look at, I would want to be the broker that stood out from the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, you know, there's a ton of competition, of course, in any line of work, but and particularly in real estate, there's just so much competition, and there's a ton of competition at ordinary. There's almost none at extraordinary, and that's where these brokers should work, or to should want to find themselves, is extraordinary. And to become extraordinary, this is certainly one element that would put them in that class. You know, I recommend to all of my clients that they have a mold inspection. That's extraordinary. It's not ordinary, and I would think that's where they would want to be. But maybe, you know, I've been wrong before. So
My question to people is it all about the sale, or should it be all about the relationship? And Jim, you know, I've been in business since 1987. I don't know it all, but one thing I do know is the relationship is very important to me.
oh, absolutely.
You know, sales come and go. But if something doesn't need to be done, it doesn't need to be done. And I just have so many people say, Dave, I regret not getting you out here on the front end when I was getting ready to buy this house, and we're doing all this work to our property, and we're finding all these problems. I said, so, it's costing people so much money
Oh, yeah.
and to do all these repairs. Whereas if you get in there and you have somebody come in there and do an inspection, mold inspection, have them do a thermal scan, have them do moisture level readings, penetrating, non-penetrating, have them take pictures, take air samples, swab, lift off samples. Knowledge is power. But I think that some people too, they're just they're just really, some people who are buying, they just don't want to spend any money. And I'm
No.
thinking to myself, you want to spend $1 million on this house and you don't want a mold inspection? No, no, Dave, no, 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 no. We don't need it. I was like, okay, okay, that's like going down a dark alley at night, and you can't see. You're not knowing what you're gonna run into, and people typically who are buying homes, they don't know what to look for. They have no clue.
Well, but that's where the agent comes in.
Well, there are a lot of agents, I guess, who are not educating the customer.
No, that's right. That's right. But that is their job to do.
Well, why aren't they doing it?
Well, perhaps it's what you and I have talked about before. It's that greed disorder.
Oh my goodness.
The sale's more important than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And my question is how do they sleep with themselves at night, knowing that they didn't do the right thing?
Well, you or I can't answer that because we're not in that position.
Right, right, right. So, folks, what Jim and I are saying here is that before you buy a home, have knowledge about the home before you buy it, before you sign on the dotted line. Okay? Just be educated, be knowledgeable about the home, know that home in and out. So, say for example, what are you going to do? Okay, so you buy the home at, we'll say, $300,000, and you think you're getting a good deal. And then you get into the home and you find out you got all kinds of damages. You got maybe, I don't know, I'm just using a figure. Maybe you've got 10, 20, $30,000 in damages that nobody told you about because you didn't have a mold inspection. Okay, so nobody sampled
It
the air.
happens.
Yeah, nobody sampled the air. And people say, well, I've even had realtors tell me this, Dave, I don't see any visual problems with the home, so I'm not recommending a mold inspection. I said, you ever seen somebody with cancer? Yeah. I said, well, did they look okay? Well, yeah. Okay, same thing here. You don't know until you do indoor air quality sampling. So you don't know until you know. So a housemate, I mean, this brand new house that I was just talking about down in South Carolina, Jim, looked perfectly fine. I mean, it was beautiful. But remember, folks, looks can be very deceiving. So, whether people have me come out, Jim, or they have you come out to check a home before they buy, this is the one of the best insurance policies they could ever get.
Well, it is, and I just had a case here last month, David. Family with three very young children. The oldest was 7, and the youngest was, I think, just over a year.
Right, right.
Bought a house, moved in. 2.5 weeks later, they were in a hotel.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They had they had finally, after, let's see, they were in the hotel maybe a week and a half. They called me in, went in, and I did a particle count in the kitchen. And it led me to the refrigerator. And the condensate pan under the refrigerator was full of mold. And of course, every time you open the refrigerator, the warm air the warm air underneath moves to the cold air in the box, and the mold was coming with it. And the children, they had to get the children out of the house. But it was a simple thing like a condensate pan. But that would have been found in an inspection.
People really.
Most likely.
Oh, that is incredible. So, if people if they just knew. I mean, for example, a lot of people don't even know about the refrigerator that you just talked about. They don't know to look out for washing machines, what to look for. People don't even know dishwashers, these automatic dishwashers, garbage disposals, you know, and they have no idea. So, but I always tell people this: which is more economical? To get somebody out there to do your mold inspection before you buy it, or wait until after you're in the home and it's yours, and 100% of those bills are going to be your responsibility.
That's
So,
right. And try living in a motel with 3 kids.
Oh my
2.5
word!
So it gets costly. It's just like, David, you're talking about the frequency of where these molds are showing up. I've been tracking now for about a year and a half, and in 38% of the homes I go into, we've got mold in the bathroom drain overflows.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not a great deal, but enough that when you're running water, that air is being displaced in the drain, and it's bringing that mold spore right up in your face.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly a child.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because of their height. But those are things, again, that isn't always going to be caught in a mold inspection, but it speaks to the fact that you've got mold in homes, and you need to be careful.
Yeah, folks, what Jim and I are talking about is that you don't know until you know, and if we have elevated levels of mold in our home, especially before we buy the home, it is advantageous to you and your family to know what's going on, because if it's going to cost $30,000 or $40,000, then you want to come in at a less of a price, because it's going to take this to get the house squared away. Does that make sense, Jim?
It does. And another thing, too, David, so many times I find that if a buyer tells his agent, I want a mold inspection with samples, the agent will go to the seller and say, are you willing to split this with the buyer? And most of the time they are. Yeah, if I'm going to have a $400 or a $500 mold inspection, yeah, I'll pay $250.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's something I see frequently, is where that cost is split between the buyer and the seller. And if not, many times the agent will pick up half of it. So,
Jim, another thing is that I was in one home, and I don't know, the homeowner was there, and the would-be buyer retained me to come in and do the inspection. Well, the man who owned the home, he was there, and he was he was giving me the third degree. And he was telling me he was telling me he never had any water damage to the house. So, I could tell that he did, and he probably tried to take care of it himself, and he probably tried to save money and do it himself. And so many people. Um, I just tell people, before you buy something, before you buy an investment, before you buy a home, know the home before you buy it.
oh, sure, yeah.
Because once you buy the home, folks, it's yours. And this should be your trump card. No pun intended. No pun intended here, by the way. But it's your trump card to say, okay, I'll agree to buy the house, but I'm going to have a mold inspection. I'm going to have a home inspection, and I'm going to have a termite inspection. I will agree to buy the house based on the inspections, all three of these inspections, or whatever inspections you want to have to the home. And now some people don't care. Some people don't care about having all this done. But I guarantee you they will care when it hits their pocketbook.
Oh, yes, yes.
And
And it's not going to sit well for the agent in a situation like that if it's something that gets by them at the sale.
But and agents and brokers should care. I mean, they should want to know what's going on with this house. And it's not like things can't be resolved. Things can be resolved. So, okay, so we've got a room, we've got an area of the house. The sheetrock's got to cut out. You can cut out. We might have to fog the house, spray antimicrobial application. We might have to do a dry out of the house or of the crawl space. It's not like these things can't be corrected.
That's right. That's right.
They can be corrected. But why would you want to move into a home that has all kinds of problems? People say, "Oh, Dave, I'm not worried about it. I'm just not worried about it. I just want to get into the home." I just like, and why the banks aren't making this mandatory? Because you would think it's the bank's money, right, Jim?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's the bank's money. Why are banks even loaning money on these properties without having the proper intel? I don't get it.
Well, and of course, I've never worked that market, David, but I know many times here I have to forward my clearance report on a mold sampling to the finance company.
Right,
They
right.
want it in their file.
Mm-hmm. And I just, folks, what we're trying to do, we're trying to educate you. We're not trying to beat anybody up here. We're trying to educate the buyer. We're trying to educate you on how important a home inspection, a mold inspection, and a termite inspection are, depending on where you live. Now, in some areas of the country or the world, maybe you don't need a termite inspection. Okay, that's fine. But guess what? I would recommend the home inspection and mold inspection. And people ask me all the time, hey, Dave, would you do my home inspection? Be like, no, I don't do home inspections. I'm very specialized. You want me to do a mold inspection? Not a problem. That's what I love. That's my passion. The people say, okay, Dave, will you come in there and take care of the problem if we don't use you? If we don't use you as the inspector, and then later on, you have to take care of a problem. Be like, sure, you want to do that, and it costs you so much more money. But why would you want to waste your money?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't get that. I don't get that.
Exactly.
So before you buy a home, to get me out there, it's going to cost you a lot less money for me to come out there and do the inspection with sampling and testing from the accredited lab versus the repairs. Oh my goodness. Sometimes these repair jobs, oh my word. Sometimes sheetrock's got to be cut out. Sometimes we got to bring in dehumidifiers and air scrubbers and air movers. And oh my goodness, there is just so much.
Well, and for instance, out here, we get most of our mold in the attics and the crawl spaces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I couldn't begin to tell you how many attics we had to replace all of the insulation, take the insulation out, put new in, once we got the mold out, because the insulation was contaminated.
Right.
So it's just, it can be very costly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The last attic I cleared for a contractor, did the clearance sampling for, it was an $11,000 cleanup, and that house was 1,700 square feet.
Oh my! So here's my question again, Jim, and to all the viewers out there that are watching this video. Why don't they want to know? Is it because they're just not educated? Is it because they just don't care? Or is it because the realtors and brokers are not suggesting that they have it checked out for their own peace of mind?
Well, again, I think they're going through the efforts to find a home. They find one they want to buy, and they don't want to complicate it.
Wow.
Really, I think that's it. And it's again, I hate to keep going back to the climatic conditions, but there's very few homes out here that aren't being inspected. I can't imagine why it would be, otherwise on the eastern seaboard, where the climate is just so much more damp. Relative humidity is much higher, and those all contribute to mold growth.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's going to take more brokers and realtors being sued before they understand how important this is, Jim.
Or they can move from ordinary to extraordinary.
Yes.
And solve the problem.
Yes. It's not like, they've already got a buyer. Okay, so they've already got a buyer. Okay, you've already got a buyer. You've already got somebody getting ready to buy the house. So for peace of mind, to all the brokers out there, to all the realtors out there, and for the buyers out there, for peace of mind for all of you, right. Do this for yourself.
Exactly.
Because this is probably one of the most economical insurance policies that you'll ever buy for your home.
That's exactly right.
And
It can just save that buyer so much money.
oh my
And
goodness.
certainly not in every situation, but take the extremes, like we've talked about here tonight. I mean, $11,000 for an attic cleanup, requiring that all the insulation come out and be replaced, and I mean that's just. And fortunately, that was found before the buyers signed off.
Oh my
So
goodness. Praise be. Praise be to that.
yeah, the seller had to take care of it,
Wow.
and
The seller had to take care of it, and who picked the company who did the work? Did the buyer pick the company, or did the seller, or who had that work?
the seller did.
Okay. So, and then of course they had to have it inspected after the work was completed, correct?
Yeah, and that's where I was brought in. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Because somebody needs to hold people accountable. And there's just, you know, I just see so much going on out there. It's just like a home that I did an inspection in, and the HVAC units in the attic. The drip pan was rusted, leaking through. The condensation line was plugged up. You could easily see that there was water damage to the attic. So that was visually. So then I said, I really need to know what's going on in the air here. So I did air samples and sent them to the accredited lab, and we've got issues. They've got downspouts and gutters that are plugged up, that have not been cleaned out. It was just like concrete. So I'm thinking to myself, why do people buy these homes when they don't know what they're buying? People don't know what they're buying.
Well, I couldn't answer that because I mean that's not something I would do.
Ah,
I would want all the information I could ever gather before I made a decision to buy. And
I get.
apparently, it's not that important to them. And a portion of that, the reason that it's not, is the agent isn't putting it on the table.
Mm, mm, mm. Well, you know what's going to happen is when more and more realtors and brokers, when they get when somebody throws lawsuits against them, that is where things are going to start changing. And if I was a broker, if I was a realtor, Jim, I'd be like, okay, so Mr. Such and Such or Miss Such and Such, before we buy this home, let's just make sure that here are some inspections that I'd recommend. I'd recommend blah 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 as far as inspections. Oh, you would? Absolutely. Well, why would you? Well, to give you peace of mind and to educate you and educate me as far as what's really going on with this home. Now the house may look perfectly fine, but you don't know until you know. And knowledge is power, but only if we apply that knowledge. So there's so many people though who think that ignorance is bliss. It's not bliss, folks. It's not bliss at all.
No, it certainly is not.
And
And think of David as an agent taking that approach, what that would do for your reputation.
well, I've even heard some agents tell me, say, Dave, all I care about is the sale. I'd be like, you kidding me, right? No, no, no. I just want to make the sale. Move on. Move on to the next. Oh my goodness. So if you're a realtor and you're a broker, and you don't care about your customer and really looking out for your customer, that's a crying shame. That is an
Oh, it is.
absolute
It
crying
is.
shame.
You're absolutely right there, David. There's
And
nothing more important.
and really things need to change. They need to change. And I'm going to do everything in my power to educate people, and that's, why I've created this YouTube channel, to educate and let people know what is going on and why this is so important. Why a home inspection and a mold inspection and a termite inspection are so important before you buy a home. And Jim, here's something else that I tell people. Because I've been getting a number of calls as far as people when they're getting ready to sign a lease on a home. They're calling me up and they're saying, "Hey, Dave." I'll be like, "Yeah. Um, do you think that we should have the house checked out before we sign a lease? We're getting ready to sign a 24-month lease on the home." I'm like, "Well, you might want to know what's going on that you're breathing in the home."
That's right.
And they're like, "Ooh, Dave, you might want to know before you get locked into something, because when you get locked into something, it's it might be expensive to get out of it, and you might have to go to court to fight over it." Now, if anybody's been to court, you know how expensive that is. And yeah, there are a lot of people who say, "Dave, I'm not worried about that." I was just like, if you've never been to court, you will know how costly that it can be.
Well, and another thing, David, that I think is worth pointing out, you're talking about this tenant landlord stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Colorado, we just had a new law go into effect last August.
Mm-hmm.
If a tenant moves in to a property and suspects mold or sees mold, the landlord has, and it calls the landlord has 24 hours to respond. That's how critical this has become.
Oh my goodness.
24 hours to respond. And then he has 6 days to make repairs.
Whoa. What happens if he doesn't make repairs?
He's fined.
Oh my goodness.
So it's very important that people, whether they're buyers or renters,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that they're aware that there are health risks in our indoor environment that we need to know of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow.
So,
This has been a very educational experience, Jim. That when people watch this and they see the closed caption at the bottom of the screen, because not only can they hear this, but they're going to be able to read this as well. And folks, you're not doing this for me, and you're not doing this for Jim. You're doing this for you. So before you buy your next home, be educated, get it inspected. You know, excuse me, get the inspections, know what is going on before you buy the home. Excuse me. And this is your trump card. No pun intended. But use what you have before you buy the home. That's all I'm saying. So, knowledge is power, but only if we apply this knowledge. So, don't buy something if you don't know what's going on. That's what you call is that walking blindly, Jim? Is that what you call walking blindly?
yes, it is.
Okay. So don't walk blindly, folks. Don't just, be informed, be educated, and you're not doing this to help Jim. You're not doing this to help me. You're doing this to help yourself as a buyer of a property. Whether you're an investor, whether you're a buyer, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman,
Well, and more important, Dave, I think is they're doing it to protect their health and the health of their family.
Yes, yes. So I guess if their health is not important to them, or their family's health is not important to them, or perhaps saving money is not important to them, or peace of mind is not important to them, I guess they shouldn't even bother, should they, Jim?
Well, I guess not. I mean, I can't fathom that would ever be the case, but uh, they certainly need to take the steps to have these inspections before they buy a home.
Mm-hmm.
Before they buy.
And I run into so many people who are calling me after the fact. They'll just say, Dave, I just bought this home. We got all kinds of, it just smells real musty here. I was like, did you call the realtor? Your realtor? Yeah. Well, how come your realtor didn't recommend a mold inspection? Oh, Dave, I don't know. They just didn't. Oh my goodness. So it's just, oh.
Yeah,
So
it's sad.
you're gonna hear of more and more lawsuits, and
I think you're right.
I'm telling realtors and I'm telling brokers, as a broker and a realtor, get your client to sign off. And I know some that do this, by the way, brokers and realtors. But get your client to sign on a piece of paper that you are you've been notified that it's a good idea to have a home inspection and a mold inspection and a termite inspection, and get them to sign off that they're denying whatever inspection, whatever.
Yes.
And some do this and some are not doing this. So I would encourage realtors and brokers, listen very good to protect yourself. Realtors and brokers, you do not want a lawsuit. And so I'm just trying to educate people to help others. I'm not trying to scare people. Knowledge is power. So, and once people have that knowledge, they need to do something with it. Get educated,
Exactly.
be educated, and yes. Jim, is there a last closing statement that you'd like to make?
Well, again, I think just be diligent about protecting your investment and your health.
And what are some ways? What are maybe say a couple other ways that people could be more protective? I guess I could ask.
Well, again, it's the mold test, the mold inspection, the mold or the house inspection, and in your geographical area, certainly the termite. Um, but and don't back away from it. Demand it, and if it's not done, walk from the sale.
Mm-hmm. Because there's plenty of homes out there, folks.
That's right.
And if you can't find a home of your choosing, you could always build one. You could always build a home. Just get a builder to build a home for you. But I think people are, they'd like to, in this country, in the United States, we want things right away. We're a very fast service kind of, country. So
And it doesn't always serve our best interest.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
No.
But Jim, I mean, I know that you have such a passion in helping others, and the name of Jim's company, uh, folks, is Control Environmental. And Jim, you are out of where?
Fort Collins, Colorado.
Okay, so Jim Packard out of Fort Collins, Colorado. The name of his company is called Control Environmental. And Jim also has a product that is called Air Sweep. If you want to get in touch with Jim, what's your website?
Website is down right now, but I have email,
What is your email?
pckrdj@aol.com.
Okay, that's simple enough. And do you have a phone number?
Yes, I do. 970-493-8100.
Okay. So you've got Jim's email and you got Jim's phone number. Now, can they also text you on your phone?
No, not on that number. Let me give you the cell phone. 970-219-0460.
Okay,
For texting.
we're in a very, very text savvy world these days. And could you give it to them one more time, please?
Sure, 970-219-0460.
Okay. So for all the people out there who want to do the text thing, text Jim. For the people who want to call Jim on the phone, call Jim. You got any questions and Jim can help you in any way, he would love the opportunity to serve you. And folks, I've known Jim, I think, for what, 10 years now?
10 years.
My goodness, time goes by so fast. And Jim is a great guy. Jim is a very honorable man. And Jim is somebody who would appreciate the opportunity to serve others. And he's been doing this a long time. And Jim, thank you so, so much for.
Thank you, David.
You are so welcome. And thank you so much, Jim.
Thank you, David. Good night.